Okay, my name is Mike Pucciarelli, and tonight's webinar we'll be talking about how we use Photoshop and Camera Raw with the White Plexiglass Table. And I first just want to start with Adobe Camera Raw, and I'll be talking about how I use it with like black and white portraiture as well, and other types of photography. So I've been addicted to still life photography since 2015. And so I teach, black plexiglass courses, white plexiglass courses, and also light painting courses. And I also have a YouTube channel, and I post that in the chat. So let's just see. So tonight, let me just see, where's the, all right. So we're going to start with Adobe Camera Raw. And so either I'll be talking about the Canon files, CR2 or CR3, or also the DNG converted files. We're going to do one file at a time. So if you want to bring it back, first thing you need to do is you open up a Camera Raw. You just, right click, open up a Camera Raw. Now, I'm going to read. To bring it back to the original state, you reset the default. But there are many ways, you could also apply presets like I do in other, light painting. So we're going to start with this file. First thing you need to do is we're going to set the white balance. Either do a white or a gray. Now look at the image. I think I want to tone down the highlights. And I think I want to tone up the shadows. I'm going to put more detail. Now I want to tone up. I want to do like the clarity. I'll do between 2 and 5. Some people, they could do an S curve. Some people just skip this tab. And the detail, where I'm just going to sharpen at the ends. But some people could go 140 for products, noise reduction at 50. And then look at the image, maybe do 50, but I'm not going to touch this. Color optics. So I could maybe work with the shadows and the color, but decided to leave this alone. And the optics, you want to have both of these checked. You want to check off remove chromatic aberration, removes color problems in the edges, and then use profile corrections where it has a lens, it has a Canon, so it's getting information from a lens profile. And a lot of times, I just like to use the A. Does it automatically. The effects, sometimes, I could put a vignetting. Obviously, this is too much. You want to put impact in the photograph. And then I click done. So this one, I'm going to open in Camera Raw. I'm going to reset the default. You choose this option. And if you want to load a preset, you can load a preset. And you can also save a preset. But we're first going to start, with, we're going to set the white balance. We want to find like a neutral or a gray chord or a gray. You'd also sound like a white. There. So the highlights, you could, I rarely ever touch the exposure. Highlights are too overblown. I'll try to use the same number, but only positive for, shadow. Yeah, thank you for joining us. This is being recorded. I just let someone in. But for the clarity, I'm not going to touch this, but some people do an S curve. Detail, some people, they have over 100 for, people, or 140 for product photography, but I'm not going to touch this. Color mixer, you could do, you could do color, you could change the color of the sliders here, but I'm not going to touch that. Color grading, you can work all of them at once, or you could work with the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows, but I'm not going to touch that. Optics, you want to make sure you have these checked. Remove chromatic aberration and use profile corrections. If you look at the profile correction, I'm using, the EF24 prime lens. I'm going to click the A for quick distortion corrections. It's the quickest way to get correct distortion problems. Now, I'm going to try to put a little vignette. Because I want to put, want people to look at this. That's why it tends to use vignetting. Vignetting, this slide is also used if there's a shadow here and a non-shadow here, but I'm trying to put a slight vignette. So I'm trying to create impact for people to look at the subject. I'm going to open up in Camera Raw. I'm going to reset the default. I'm going to click done. See how the thing disappeared. Now I'm going to open it in Camera Raw. I'm going to work on the white balance. I'm going to find a gray. I'm going to look at the image. I think we need to, decrease the highlights. I think I want to have more details in the dark, so we want to increase the shadows. And I just want to be careful of texture. I just want to do, 2. And I don't want to have 84. And maybe I could adjust the exposure by just moving it like half. More detail. So I'm not going to touch, but some people, they could do an S. Detail. I'm going to let the detail alone. I'm going to jump down to optics, where I'm going to make sure this is checked. And I'm using my 85 prime lens for this shot. It's one way to do food photography. We have the food, but you have light at a certain direction. I'm going to see if I can correct any geometry distortion problems. Actually, I'm going to let this one. What I could do is I could the train trot, but I feel like that's too much. So now I want to see if I could put in a slight vignetting to surround the photo subject. I click done. This is just a glass on a small white plexi. So we're going to open a Camera Raw. I'm going to set the default. I'm going to click done. So suppose, I'm in Camera Raw. If I want to apply preset, I could do load. Load many presets. I'm just going to say reset the default. Done. Open Camera Raw. So what I'm going to do is try to find a white or a gray. Because before it was too blue, it was a blue color cast. I'll take care of this in Photoshop, these things. I'm okay with the highlights and shadows. I'm not going to touch the curve. Leave the detail alone. And I'm using the 85 prime lens. Use profile correction, just getting information from the Canon lens. Geometry. I feel like that's too much, so I'm going to leave it alone. You could also these others are worth experimenting, but I'm going to leave it alone. Vignetting. A slight vignette. I'm going to right click. I'm going to open in Camera Raw. I'm going to click on a white. I'll do that one again. I'm going to open in Camera Raw. I'm going to set the default. I'm going to click done because I want to start all over. Now I'm going to open a Camera Raw. There we go. Trying to find a white. So you have a nice shadow here. But I want to take out the highlights. shadows. Got some detail by improving the shadows. And then I'm going to do clarity 2, 3. I'm going to skip over the curve. I'm going to skip over the detail. I'm not going to worry about the color mixer. This is good for black and white. Color grading, you go with mid-tone shadows, highlights. You can do it all at once or separately. Make sure I check off remove chromatic aberration and use profile corrections. I'm using 85 prime lens. I'm going to check off the A for quick distortion corrections. Now I'm going to put in a vignette. This is too much, so you want to put in a vignette where you could barely see it. Then you click done. I'm going to open up in Camera Raw. I'm going to reset. I'm going to click done. So now this thing disappeared, but we're going to edit in Camera Raw. I'm going to find like a gray. And I think I'm going to also tone down the exposure. So if I can detail this. Put a little more detail in the shadow. I could put a curve, but I'm not. I want to sharpen at the end. And it's using, this time he's using the 24 lens. I'm going to admit someone in. Thank you for joining us, John. This is being recorded. Okay.
And then what I also do is during intermission and right after.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick distortion correction. And then I'm going to put in a vignette because I want people to look at the subject. I'm going to click done. There's some tools that I use with, I could use battery name, the rename. Tool that I like to use is the image processor for if I'm doing JPEGs. I don't know if you can see my screen, but you could either select the first file to apply settings, but I already have all the settings, but there's several ways I could use this where if I'm posting to the web, I want to make sure I have convert profile to sRGB checked. If I'm not, if I'm copying, pasting Photoshop, I don't want to have that checked. And the image processor, basically, I quickly process JPEGs for other types of photography.
We're only seeing bridge.
Yeah, I knew that there's going to be that problem, but if you just go to Tools, Photoshop, and its image processor.
Okay.
And, depending how you use the photo, the JPEG, if you post to the web, make sure you check off that sRGB feature. But if you just want to copy and paste in Photoshop, don't check that off because you have a color mismatch problem. So now I'm going to go into Adobe Photoshop, and I'll do one file at a time. Just going to click OK. I'm going to do a new screen share. Now, a lot of times, in portrait photography and also skin retouch, and also even in product, is called the mixing healer brush, the mixer brush, where you just want to be clean brush. You want to make sure that all sample all layers is checked. And then you just want to use the Alt or the Option key. You just want to paint it away. You mix the paints. If you want to make a brush bigger, just, push the right French brace key. But if you want to resample, push the Alt key. A lot of times I like to use actions to speed things up. I want to quickly, if I'm saving a number of, things in Photoshop, you can also go to File Save, but I like to just run actions. And navigate. So next time I run this action, I'll come here. It knows where to go. So I'm going to run, when I run actions, I run them in groups where it's play action, where they'll run this action, they'll make an adjustment. These are all steps. When it says play action, it calls another action. I'm going to run this action. So all this happens. So I have a black signature, a white signature. So I'm going to just throw one away. I can also change the color if I like to. So there's a separate action for the signature. Now I'm going to get my paintbrush. Make the opacities on 100. And the flow is about 15 to 16. I'm going to paint in the important part. Before I do that, I got to Control I to invert the layer. White reveals, black hides. So we're painting, white on a black layer mask because we want to reveal more of the subject. And now, so when I'm burning, the luminosity blend mode, but now it's different. Sometimes I could change the opacity to 50%. I'm gonna leave it. So we have a dark subject. We'll leave it 100%. A lot of times I change when I dodge at a screen. I like to use like opacity 25 or 50%. Click auto to correct the color. And then I'm going to try to, for the contrast, I'm going to work with the midtones. I'm going to save it. I'm going to run some background actions. Where when I run an action, I have them grouped so all these actions happen one right after the other when you see play action. So to do dust and scratches, I have it at 3.
Thank you for calling Gregory Funding. Did you know you can save time by making payments online or through our automated phone system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Visit www.gregoryfunding.com to learn more or select payments by pressing 1 at the main.
So the sharpen, when I sharpen, a sharp mask, do my thing, but now it says, I also, you know, this is also a high pass. Now I'm going to put a frame. So when I call this action, this action calls other actions, and I come up here, and this is called. So when this happens, so it's going to look for this action. So this action is called, and then it comes over here, and this condition is called. Depending on the size, this action happens or the big width happens. So when I use actions, I use them in groups for quicker processing. Now I could save as a JPEG, or I could also, I like to use actions because it's quicker. Or they have the action here. So I'm going to run this action. So it's automatically to save the JPEG. And the next time I run this, I'm just going to save it in here. Now, if I were to do a black and white, suppose it's for a portrait photograph. I choose one of my own. And then I choose something I found a friend showed me. We got work to do. So this was through a portrait. Let's save it. So now I'm going to open up, I'm going to go to another, I'm going to do new screen share. I'm going to right click, I'm going to say open with Adobe Photoshop. You just click open and then you're in Adobe Photoshop. I'm also going to reset my workspace. I'm going to go to workspace. I'm going to reset it because sometimes it just gets out of whack. Make my screen smaller. And I could also, you know, I don't always have to use a mixing healing brush. I could use a spot healing brush, clone out. Sometimes I like to use a, you know, mixer brush. This is how I do portraits, where I have a new layer. I want to make sure that you check off sample all layers. Let me get the line out. So I'm going to press the Alt key and press the mouse. Make my thing bigger by the, you know, French brace key. Anytime you want to delete a layer, you just bring it to the trash. So I'm going to run my grouped actions. I'm going to throw one of my signatures away. I bring my signature down over here. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to do Control I because I want to invert the layer mask. Because I'm painting whites on a black layer mask. White reveals, black hides. And I'm going to make a screen smaller. I'll make it a little bigger. Let me get a brush. I'm going to make sure I'm about opacity 100. I like to use flow 16. Now, other photography, like light painting, I would use like a really low flow, like 5% or 4% or 3%. But since we're painting objects, I want to use flow of 15 or 16%. I just want to paint in. So we're burning at a luminosity blend mode. Now, I want to tone this down to maybe 50% or 25. I want to bring out the subject. I want to go to my layers. Use the mid-tone sliders for contrast. Then I'm going to save my work. I'm just going to do Control S so I can run an action. I'm going to post my YouTube channel. So now, let's see. That's right, we did that, but now I'm gonna go to my back, run some background actions. We're on a different set. This time I'm gonna run where the speckle has no prompt. Dust and Scratches does. I have it at 3. Now I use fade where I do, sharpen, unsharp mask, do my thing, and then I go to edit, fade, or I have it at like a luminosity blend mode. It's great for contrast. So when I run this action, the actions happen to one right after the other. I'm gonna put a frame on. Let me see if I could zoom. Let's see. Oh yeah. So you have the key line of the frame. And then I've shown you, I'm using that same action where I play this action. I come down over here and then I play this action, I have a condition. Since the width is bigger, this action, big height happens. So then when so my image size, the longest side is always 400. And it's at 200 pixels per inch. So if the width were bigger, the width would be 4,000 and the height would be something else. I'm using pixels. And suppose I wanted to make this into a black and white photograph. Let's see, I'll just check this one. Okay, and then I run, this is a complicated, the second part is a complicated. Now maybe I can leave it like this as a vignette. It depends on the taste. And now, I'm going to put some detail by pressing the auto button. Some more detail by just adjusting the curve of that action. I could run an action, but I could also do it like this, where I do export. When I would export it, it's converted to sRGB, so you can post this on the web. And then I click save. Since it remembered where I saved, it'll save in the same location as before. And I click save. I'm just saving a high quality JPEG. I'm going to do new screen share. For bridge, where if I wanted to, since I'm now in bridge, if I want to go to Photoshop, I could just, right click, Adobe Photoshop, and I'll do that. And I'm going to do a new screen share when I'm in Adobe Photoshop. Click open. Make sure that I'm Adobe Photoshop. There. So I'm going to make my screen a little smaller with the navigator. Now, I'm going to run some actions. Let's see. I don't see any cloning problems, so I'm going to skip the healing brush. I'm going to skip the cloning. I'm going to go on to this action. So what I'm going to do, I'll disable a layer. I'm going to, okay. So I'm going to invert by doing Control-I, Control-Command-I, Control-Command-I. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the brush, make sure my opacity is 100, flows about 15 to 16%. So I'm only concerned really about the lenses here. Then I'm going to use the same percent because it's dark, and I want to put detail. I'm going to put more detail in the lenses. Then I push the auto to color correct it quickly. I'm using the mid-tone slider to adjust the contrast. I'm going to throw this empty layer away. I'm doing it the trash. I'm going to save it. You do Control-S. I got my actions where I'll run this one again. We talked about dust and scratch and speckle. And I'll talk about the high pass filter. It's high pass. You can change the radius, all that good stuff. And you use a certain blend mode. Soft light. So if I were to run that, just that filter, see, it's soft light. It's good for sharpening with contrast. So this is just, this blend mode I make the changes, I click OK, and then I have blend mode soften. Then, suppose I wanted to turn this into a black and white. This is for a portrait photograph. Pretty much a black and white, but then where I'd go over here. Go to my levels adjustment. Bring in some detail. Go to my curves. I'm just using a few controls to bring out a little more detail in my subject. I want to save it as a JPEG. Have an action where it's quality 100, and I am gonna, make sure since I'm posting to the web, I want to make sure this is convert to sRGB is correct, checked. Then I forgot to also, whoops, got to put my frame on. You just run the action. That's where now, let's see. See how that action changes the width, the 400, which is the longest side. So width, since the width is longest, it's 400. About cubic per 100. So the posting to web, it's convert the sRGB, and then I click save. Then I click save. I'm going to do a new screen share. Go to Adobe Bridge. Go to a new screen share. Okay, whoops. So I'm going to go into Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to right click. So I'm going to do new screen share. I'm going to Adobe Photoshop. So when the raw file opens, I just click open, or I can click open object. Make sure that I'm doing now. Got some problems here. And sometimes, we could just what I could do is just, duplicate layer. I'm going to get my regular rectangular marquee. Control D. Going to make a better selection. I'm going to go to edit. And I'm going to go to content aware. So it's edit content aware. And I'm going to click OK because I like what I see. I'm going to do Control D to get rid of the selection. I'm still going to use the same tool. I'm now going to do another rectangular marquee. I'm going to make that. I'm going to go to edit, content aware. I like what I see, so I'll click apply. Or click OK. I'm going to get the rectangular marquee. I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna go edit. I don't see it. I like what I see. I click OK, or click apply, then OK too. You could also, use the mixer healer brush, where your clean brush. Make my thing a little smaller with the left brace key. Now, see if I can get rid of this thing over here. Under edit aware, content aware fill under the edit menu. Whoops. See this? I like this, and I'll check the change. Edit. Since I do not like this change, I'm going to click cancel. Do Control D. Edit. Still don't like the change. I'm going to make my thing bigger. I'm going to do Alt, and I'm going to click the keyboard. Oh, wait a minute. Or there's so many ways we can get rid of that. So we could do. We're just going to rectangular marquee around the black part. I don't like it. So now I'm going to do this. I'm going to get my clone stamp tool. I'm going to I'm going to use the Alt Option key.
You're under the darken mode.
Yeah, I'm going to do it under the normal mode. Sorry. There. Thanks. It's Photoshop. It's not perfect, but I'm going to save it on my computer now. I'm just going to yeah. So now I'm going to combine two layers. I'm just going to say merge visible. I'm going to run my actions again. Where, let's see. Where we do Control or Command I to invert the mask. Control or Command I to invert the mask. Now, I didn't catch this. Do content aware fill. Click OK. I'm not gonna work, this doesn't, I could get this out, but I'll let that stay. Now I'm gonna get my brush. Opacity to 100%, flow at about 16%. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna, burn at a luminosity blend mode, the glass and the subject. Now, I'm going to do something too. I'm going to make another copy of this layer. Let's see. Because I want to illustrate where sometimes that 100% is just, it's just too bright. See how you don't even see the back rim of the glass. That's why I'm going to chuck this layer. That's why maybe I'm thinking about just try 25%. I want it to look natural. Notice how this is not as powerful as this because this is at 25% and this is at 100%. And I chose 25 because I felt like maybe 100 was too much, but maybe 50 I thought was too much. I decided just to bring it down to 25%. So now I did a quick auto correction. And I want to adjust the mid-tone slider for the contrast. Now, suppose this were a black and white photograph, and this were a model, but it's not. I would run, actually before the black and white. Actually, we can do that because in black and white portraiture, I don't use any background actions for the black and white portraiture. I feel like that's too tough on the skin. And if this were a black and white photograph, I would choose an action. And then because now, let's see. I want to bring some detail out by clicking on the levels adjustments. By clicking on the auto. I still want to get more detail here. I like this. Maybe I'll clone out that, but I'm just going to drag up the slider here for more detail down here. I suppose I want to put a frame. I do a frame. Now, I feel like maybe the frame's too, the whole thing is too dark. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my adjustments. Try to make the whole, because I want to see more detail in the key line. The only thing I did was I put an adjustment layer the topmost layer, and I got more detail in the frame and the photograph. I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to save as a JPEG legacy. And notice that the height is 4,000 because it's the biggest side. And I'm going to convert to sRGB. And it's going to save where I previously saved. I'm going to do a new screen share. I'm going to go to Bridge real quick. I'm just going to open in Camera Raw. I'm opening Bridge. Right click. I'm just going to click open. Make sure that I'm sharing Adobe Bridge, Adobe Photoshop. So, let me see. I think okay, we didn't do this one. So now, sometimes vignetting some people, if they see this as a problem in a photograph, they can go to Filter, Camera Raw. This is where that vignetting slider, you don't want any vignetting, but if you want vignetting, I'm going to get my marquee. I'm going to edit, content aware. Whoops. I need to go to edit, and I need to go to contour aware fill. I chose content aware scale. So see a little bit, it's not perfect. But also go like this. Should be normal. There we go. I'm going to get the rectangular marquee. Sometimes you have to divide and conquer. It's too big. Nope, I don't like it. Let me get the clone brush. I'm going to push the Alt or Option key. Get rid of that. There we go. Not perfect, but for teaching purposes. But I could also do this as actually, I'll do maybe this later. It's got some, with the Mixer Healer brush, I'm gonna make sure that I'm at clean brush. I'm going to push the Alt or Option key. So I think what I'll do is at the end, I'll crop this out. So I think I'll use up there. Do Control Command I. Do Control Command I. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same opacity for the burn and dodge layers of this. Opacity 100, flow 15 to 15, 16 to 15%. Make my brush a little bigger. Pushing the right brace key. I'm bringing out the bottle better. I'm going to save the cloud. I'm going to save my computer. So I'm just going to run some background actions. I'm not going to turn this into black and white. I am going to put a frame on it. And you want to put, detail on the frame. Yeah, I selected the frame. I could change it. Color to I just change it to screen blend mode. 50% gray. And I could change the opacity. I'll just quickly export this. This is 100. I think I'm going to do one more. I think I'm going to do this one. We go open in Camera Raw. We open in Adobe Photoshop. Make sure that I'm sharing with Photoshop. Now, this is where I'm going to make a duplicate copy. Or if I want to go to filter, because you got some vignetting problems. Or that some people don't like vignetting, some people do. Now, since I'm going to get rid of the white signature. There's an action for this, an action for the other signature. I'm going to do Control or Command I. Control or Command I. Looks more natural. Now I'm going to get a brush. Make a brush smaller. I'm going to try to bring out the fruit. I do have it at 100, but I'm just, I'm trying to bring out the fruit. Where I'm burning the luminosity blend mode, 100%. And this time I decided just to use the 100%, and I brought out the fruit better. Okay. I'll just save it with anything. Let's see. I'm going to turn this into black and white where like that. There. I need to put more detail. It's a nice, cool vignette, but I need to put more detail because that's that. I don't want to do the vignette. And then I think there's too much space, so I'm going to do this, is I'm going to crop it out. Meant to crop the other one, but I forgot. Crop it out. And I think there could be more light here. There. You did turn this into black and white. I put a frame on. Now, if I want to put more detail in the frame, I can change the color. Control Z, I'm going to take that back. There's no data here. There's no data over here. Suppose I wanted to make the, or I change the button mode of the screen. And I change it to 50% gray. Where I want to just lower the opacity or be favorable in the fill. Well, that's how I use Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw with the White Plexiglass Table. And I also talked about how to do black and white portraiture. Yeah, I'm glad you liked the session. So does anyone have any questions? Or I'm also going to post this recording to our YouTube channel. You can unmute yourself if you want to talk. All right. Anything else? I'll just I'll stop the share. And then